Hello, I'm Jason Wynn, and today I'm going to be talking to you about AI in meeting rooms, in particular, the Facilitator agent. So we're going to walk through where to start, what do we need to think about if we want to use the Facilitator agent, what are the Microsoft Teams room requirements. If we want to use Facilitator, we need to be able to make sure that our equipment is configured the way that it should be. Look into voice enrollment, and just making sure that the AI understands who we are and who's speaking in what particular moment. Any sort of speaker recognition configuration, how do we enable and start troubleshooting voice profiles, the meeting requirements itself, and then we'll delve into what Facilitator can do for us. So where to start? So Facilitator within meeting rooms is really around understanding what we can do with this. So works inside our Teams meetings to be able to provide that improved collaboration. I like to call it the ability to have a meeting without a meeting. The ability to have and facilitate in information that we're having within a meeting to help curate and create the AI notes so that we can be together and edit together as and when we need to. Provides us the ability to have the summary of key decisions that we may be having during that meeting and to be able to have the open questions and that discussion, but more importantly, to have that follow on from that as and when we need to. Answering participant questions during the meeting chat to be able to facilitate that information that we need to be able to have as part of that meeting. To share agendas from the invite and meeting notes from the chat. Be able to the prompts, and in particular, setting goals if no agenda is found. The ability to keep the meeting on track with aligned to agendas and any sort of topic markers that may or may not have been discussed at that point in time. The ability to manage time and being able to leverage that ensures that our meetings are working efficiently the way we want it to, at the pace in which we need to be able to accomplish our goals. Warns when the meeting is running over or helps us schedule up any follow-ups. And likewise, we can facilitating at mentioning people to create documents or to manage those tasks where we want to. But one of the first steps we need to think about doing is the ability to recognize that person, to leverage that voice. So speaker recognition identifies everybody in the room, enabling Copilot and Teams and intelligent recap to occur. In addition to that, there's more functionality we get by allowing our voices to have that attribution to understand who's saying what. We can start utilizing technology like voice isolation, where we've seen it before, where we have the ability to blur our backgrounds or apply a particular background. We now have the ability to use that same technology, but for our voice, to allow these things to be able to isolate our voice, but also for the AI to understand who in that particular room, who's speaking, who's being understood. So recognizing teams and kind of what that setup overview and what this looks like. So in our organizations, there's a few steps that we need to do, that we need to turn on, that we need to ensure that to be able to get the most out of Copilot and most of our team's rooms. And specifically, AI admins to be able to verify that speaker recognition is supported within their environment. And we then set up the enrollment, what we need to do for those users to be able to set up their voice, to make sure that the team setup is in the configuration of the profile itself. Allows us to then be able to be understood by those endpoints that are used in those meeting rooms. And users, once they've enrolled that voice, have the ability to understand and what the requirements are within these things. And we'll walk through all these different processes together. So we're looking at the rooms themselves. We want to verify that the room's equipment is running the way we want it to. That we have the rooms and the right configuration of the physical endpoints. We need to verify that the voice enrollment is turned on for Teams itself, so that way people can utilize that technology. We enable the speaker recognitions on the Teams rooms, the actual profile of the room that's being used. Below it. And lastly, the users need to record their voice inside the profile, and users must go into Teams and set up this configuration. Now, a vast majority of it is a single line of code. Again, primarily using PowerShell to configure those environments. And again, we can utilize that. So if we want particular rooms to have this functionality or don't, or particular teams, and we can then break this down even to possibly into geographies if we're worried about particular areas of the business that don't allow us to have that functionality, or we have different laws or regulations, we can enable this policy for people that we need to within their environment and exclude people who don't. So Teams rooms and requirements. So a room resource should have, again, a Teams Pro license. We need to have a Teams Room Pro attributed to that meeting room to be able to use Facilitator. And we need to support the rooms, again, required to have intelligent speakers, and we need to have certified endpoints. This can't be old technology. We want to ensure that the quality of the information that we're pulling from these rooms are the absolute best. Now, it's worthwhile speaking to different providers, because some providers give a better understanding, a better output, and a higher likelihood that the information that's being spoken in those rooms are correct. Again, we identify those workloads. In particular, we're thinking about the participants who need to be identified by enrolling their voices inside Teams, so that way you can understand who's saying what within that space. The current number of maximum participants right now is around 20. However, that number, just like all Microsoft cloud sources and cloud applications, is likely to go up as and when the product builds in and starts to be used more, and we start to see the size of these participant meetings being increased. And again, evaluate the existing hardware or incorporate certified devices to ensure that we get the best possible technology out of those things, out of the meeting rooms themselves. When we're talking about evaluating the hardware and incorporating intelligent speakers, we've got two options. One is to use the existing hardware. So we can look at what that hardware is. Does it meet certification? And if we need to extend the capability, we can do so. So do we think about, do we want to need to have the actual microphones closer to the people? Because before we were quite happy to be able to capture it from the front of the room, but now we may have the requirement to extend that closer to the people to be able to grab that information more fluidly from the facilitator agent itself. And again, certified intelligent speakers, making sure that we have everything that's supported by the Microsoft list in the functionality within that is absolutely paramount. So utilize what we have, but utilize the technology that's been certified Microsoft, and it helps us refer to something called the word error rate. So ensuring that it understands who's saying what and when. Another step to think about is the voice enrollment. So when we start doing face and voice enrollment, we can allow it to understand who's actually inside that space. It allows it to understand who's inside there. And again, I spoke to you a second ago about it, that voice isolation. It helps reduce the background noises and secondary speakers that may be inside a space. And particularly, this is really good when you're working from an environment that's noisy or in a shared office space. By enrolling our voice and by enabling our voice to be part of that, it allows us to have that functionality in there. Again, we can also leverage the face enrollment. So when I walk into a room, it knows who I am and my face within that space, and identifies me in being that. So again, users have full control of their voice and their data and their face data, which then if they want to stay enrolled, they keep it profiled and it stays within that. So we, even as admins, are disabled from enrolling it or doing anything with that data, and it lives only within that user's environment. So some admin settings to think about. So by default, starting late 2025, organizations will automatically start moving over into having this enabled. However, there may be environments where we need to think about turning this functionality on if it's not already on. And we use PowerShell to do so. So make sure we're running the latest Teams admin bolt-in within PowerShell itself. And then we can allow us to run that new CS Teams AI policy, and allows us to then configure these two things. So again, enroll voice enrollment and enroll face deployment are already enabled, but it's not for all organizations. So you may want to go and verify that that information is working. So if it's disabled, the results of it is that the user's not being able to roll their voice within the profile. And I've got a walkthrough of some of the examples of what that may look like depending on the mix match between this functionality being enabled correctly. And therefore, people can't use the speaker recognition within a Teams room. So action for us is to run that get Teams AI policy and verify that things are working the way we want it to. In this case, I've just applied it to a global policy, but it could be on per policy that you want within that. It can be based across any policy. We can create our own new policies if we wanted to and make it as granular as we want to. If I just want to enable this for my entire organization, we can utilize the global policy. And then within that as well, we can start deviating from that. We can roll it. And again, we can also do something called speaker attribution for BYOD. Works exactly the same. If I'm bring my own device within the meeting room and I want to enable that functionality, we need to have it. But again, we need to verify that that AI policy is set up to, within that enroll voice must be set to enabled. Delving into the speaker recognition itself. What do I need to do as an administrator? What type of configurations we need to have? So we set that meeting policy control to the voice-based user identity within that meeting room. So again, we set in this example, we're setting it, we're running that against the global policy with that room attribute user override to attribute. That means I can attribute the voice of the people in the room to a particular voice that they've set up, that they've configured, that we're running. So we enable that within the global teams policy or each individual policy. Again, what I would suggest we utilize, and what Microsoft's best practice state, is we set that room override attribute to attribute, and then the room people name user override to on, and allow transcription to on. This then allows us to pull the information the way we want it to. So again, we can set these values it allows us to have the behavior that we want to have within this. So by enabling that voice override attribute to attribute, rooms users are then attributed based on their enrollment status, and users who are enrolled are shown with their names within the transcription, and who users aren't, they're then known as speaker. And every time it grabs another voice that it doesn't yet know, it then takes another numeral after it. So speaker 1, speaker 2, speaker 3, if it doesn't know who those 3 people are. By applying that room people name user override attribute to on, the policy then allows us to have people recognize the option of Teams room under the call control bar. So we could see who is actually in the room, depending on which voice they have and whether they've spoken in that space or if it's grabbed their face within that room, and it will tell us. And so if you look at the meeting rota of who's actually in the Teams call, you can see that they're actually within that room itself, and you can understand who's what and where. And the allow transcription attribute then allows the policy to allow us to have that real-time and post-meeting captions and transcriptions enabled for that meeting itself. So we look at voice profiles, and this is something that we have to configure as an end user. And when users set this up, we go through the Teams app to be identified in the transcript itself for each person that's attending the meeting, or whether it's in person or remote. We set up our digital voice profile in the Teams app so they can be identified. And you can see in this example, we've got a person that's identified as a speaker, and so there's identified as the individual. So you can see that people that didn't have the configuration configured right, it's known as the meeting room itself. So they're known as conference room 1245. But when it understands who our voice recognition is, it can start assigning those attributes in the meeting notes to the people who are actually attending the meeting itself. So we can see Mona wants to look at the product roadmap before she's committing it to Danielle. So they know who's inside that room, and then start applying that access and that information to who's actually inside it. So as an end user, if I'm looking to understand how I start getting the most out of the Facilitator agent, what do I need to do? So users set up that voice profile inside Teams app. And we start recording ourselves, and we have to read out that information. And so you feel a little bit silly for a few seconds while you're reading the information out. But what it will do then is it'll understand how you speak and what your voice is, in knowing that that signature of what you're saying is you. So whenever you speak inside a room and start applying this information, it allows us to sign it. Likewise, we can see that we can also do the face recognition at the same time. So it utilizes our camera on our laptops or our desktops to grab that video footage of our face, and we use it the same way you would to sign into a modern smartphone device, where it grabs your face from multiple angles and allows us to apply that information in. Now, That information could also be used once we're in a meeting to identify who we are, but also ensure that the meeting room itself is getting the best possible angle of you for that particular time. So any additional enrolling of the voice will benefit from that. So we'll be able to benefit from the things, like I said before, like a voice isolation within our calls and meetings, and be able to apply these things through. But what if it is an administrator, I haven't configured things quite right? What if I've done part of it, but we haven't done everything? So what we'll see then is with user experiences that they may be, the voice enrollment may be turned on, but we haven't enabled that voice enrollment yet. And what will happen then is the user will get notified twice in a week and be told that this voice enrollment still needs to be completed. Please create a voice profile and allow them to go into Teams under recognition, settings and recognition, and apply and create that voice profile. Now, we could do the face profile at the same time. If we don't want to have that, then that's not mandatory as part of the facilitator agent itself. If I have configured it properly and I have enrolled it, what we'll see within Teams is the ability to see that, and we can export, or we can remove, or we can update that. If we suddenly have an occurrence where our voice changes, or we need to have something's changed or damaged the way we speak, we can add that or update that. Or if we realize that the ability for it to identify me is not what I expected it to, or if I've recorded the first time and it's not a good location and everything's noisy and it hasn't grabbed a true reflection of what my voice is like, again, I can update that. Likewise, I can update my face as my appearance changes over time. If I start wearing glasses or changing my appearance in any way, then I can update my face profile at the exact same time to be able to have that. Now, what happens if a user wants to enroll this, but our organization hasn't yet turned us on? Then what will happen then is when we go to utilize and set that recognition up, if we haven't turned on voice enrollment, then it will show us this. So we cannot enroll our voice into it. We cannot apply our voice policies to it because it's not yet configured to do so. So some of the meeting requirements and what do we need to think about is that room devices need to be set up with that recognition and have that voice attribution turned on. If we want to be able to go and identify those people based upon what their voices are and what they need to have, we need to enable that. And again, the users are required to automatically identify me in meetings and captions and transcriptions to have that turned on. By default, it's already turned on. Again, we can apply it to everybody utilizing the global policy, and that will just set it for everybody. But if I want to go and enable or disable the attribution from the Teams meeting room, I can do so. I can record, we can transcribe, we can identify that speaker, we can identify so we can create the correct attribution in the transcript if we need to. So as somebody's speaking, I can add that person to that transcript and ensure that it knows who's part of that. So that brings me to getting things right, to have it to be in this point if I wanted to start using Facilitator itself. But what is Facilitator and how does it work and what does it allow me to do? So Facilitator is like a real-time device that allows me to bring this information in, that allows me to join these meetings, even if it's not a scheduled meeting. So I can walk into a room and bring in that functionality and have all my meeting notes and be able to have that meeting recap and all the goodness of things behind it. But what if I wanted to walk in? I could walk in, use my phone and scan it, and then join that session as myself, and Microsoft will continue to have that facilitator functionality built into it. But what type of things do I need to have Facilitator work? And Facilitator itself is around having that Teams functionality. So as an organization, I must be using Loop. I need to enable Loop as part of it. Okay, so what happens is the actual storage of the information and all the meeting notes and all the information within there requires me to have Loop within my Microsoft 365 environment enabled. I need to make sure that transcription is enabled. Again, that Facilitator only runs and turns on transcription during the meeting, and if the meeting itself won't be recorded, it just utilizes the transcript of what's going on within the meeting. And then we need to be able to have that QR code, that scanning of that information, because the meeting notes belong to the person, not the endpoint itself. So currently, the only person who scans the QR code, the invite of the facilitator, is identified, attributed to that meeting itself. And it allows me to have that information applied to me and be able to support the other room participants will happen later. So again, I can go and I can bring those things into it. And we're already seeing that the facilitator being able to identify other people in the meeting room. And the reason why we brought those other points about identifying who you are is that I believe in the very near future, we're going to start identifying everybody in the meeting room to be able to have that context about who's doing what and why, and the action items will be part of those things. So facilitator within agent within, we have the ability to set up facilitator within rooms. So what do we need? What type of functionality do we need to have to be able to perform these actions and these tasks? So again, we need that Microsoft 365 license is required for scheduling and unscheduled meetings. And we need to be able to have a Microsoft 365 Copilot license as well. So Microsoft Team Room Pro, and it has to be a Pro license to be able to take advantage of that. Okay, so turn on Facilitator within Microsoft Teams Room. We need to go inside the management portal of itself, and we need to show that Facilitator QR component actually on the physical endpoint. Another functionality that we need to enable on the physical endpoints as well is the ability to enable that public preview. So once we manage and we enable that functionality, we have the ability to start enabling that functionality within that room to have the facilitator agent. Now, some rooms will show up as facilitator. Some may show a new icon that says take notes. Both functionalities will do exactly the same thing. And when we enable that AI and we enable that the functionality with a facilitator within the Teams meeting room, again, what happens in the back end is we turn on facilitator for the meetings. We make sure we have those licenses applied to it. We make sure that we have the right licenses attributed to ourselves to be able to allow us to do it. We make sure that we have the public preview for that participant. And lastly, we make sure we have loop enabled for it. And that allows us to bring this all together. So for unscheduled meetings, then what we need to think about having is the ability to have apply that Teams license to that device, turn on Facilitator for the rooms, and then turn on the public preview for it. And that allows us to have unscheduled meetings to walk up, scan it with my phone, and join that meeting as an ad hoc participant for that meeting itself. So for unscheduled meetings, we think about how we want to apply this through. So facilitator must be started in somebody's room who's signing into it. Once the facilitator has been invited to an in-person meeting with us to pull these things through. So again, we can organize, we schedule these things, we can bring things in, whether it's scheduled or unscheduled. It brings us into, we can bring facilitator into that meeting to help take those notes. When I think about in the Teams room and when we want to apply this information through to it, after you perform all the other steps within it and everything's been met, then we can go into it, use that QR code available within it, and this banner will appear when there's no scheduled meeting within place to allow us to, within what we want to be able to add that into it. So once we've applied this, we click that facilitator button on the left-hand side, and then we can scan it with our phone, with it that has Teams installed on it that allows us to join that meeting. To see what it kind of looks like and how we want to apply these things through, the experience we have to be able to apply this information is we join the meeting, it displays the room, indicates that the facility is listening to the conversation and taking notes. Then after a few minutes, the screen will display the notes and start summarizing what we spoke about, some of the discussion points that we've had to be able to bring these things in. And at the end of the meeting, we simply end that Teams room meeting call, and then we're able to access those notes and the navigation and have the recap of what's happened within that, and then start deciding what we want to do with run this discussion AI notes. Thank you very much for joining this session. I hope you understand more around Facilitator and how it can help you being able to gain the understanding and driving that those AI components that we have within Microsoft Teams.